Hi, and welcome to another Dusk 1947 battle report. Today we'll be playing a slightly modified version of a scenario called Meet Your Fate, featuring the SSU and the Axis. A model from each side will be chosen to represent the commander, and the one and only objective in this scenario is to eliminate the opposing leader. The battlefield is quite open, with a large central wood in the middle of the board with a few ammo crates scattered around it. The SSU will enter from the northwest corner, and directly across in the southeast corner the Axis will come onto the board. The original scenario does not include the aforementioned large wooded area, but in order to obscure line of sight and encourage flanking maneuvers, we decided to add it to our battle. So, on to the armies. The SSU force consists of 6 units in total and is quite the mix of heavy armor, steel guard and regular infantry. A steel guard assault squad will hopefully add anti-infantry punch to the force. And a red army rifle squad will likely do the same, but with the addition of 2 long-ranged snipers. Since snipers should prove effective at taking out specific models, a steel guard sniper team is also included in the force. An Alexander heavy tank is a proper powerhouse with Tesla weaponry and 3 machine guns. A brand new unit to the force is the Matryoshka. Its powerful anti-tank guns are capable of wrecking a medium walker with a single shell. Lastly, a Red Army command squad rounds off the force, with the unit leader chosen as the commander, the infamous Captain Novikov. The Axis force is made up of 8 units, ranging all the way from blood-crazed zombies to Panzerkampfläufers. The medium combat walker trio consists of 2 Ludwigs and one of their bigger brothers, a Jugluther. All of them are kitted out with more than capable anti-tank guns and a machine gun each. Although they're not the most powerful of walkers, they can hopefully combine for quite some effect. Next up are 3 unruly units of Blutkreuz bioengineering madness, or as they are more commonly referred to as zombies. Their primary function is to draw attention and, more importantly, bullets away from the more important units. Speaking of which, a heavy grenadiers assault squad will be the main anti-infantry slot and will also escort the Axis elected commander, Lieutenant Köhler. He is an absolute beast with 2 sets of dual heavy machine guns and the special rule move and fire. Turn 1 began with the Axis winning priority, forcing the SSU to move out first. They activated the Red Army Rifle Squad and march moved them southwards along the western flank. The wood was currently blocking any firing lanes, and so it seemed a good idea to send them on flanking duty. The Axis reached for one of the zombie squads and simply had them run up towards the wood. The Steel Guard Assault Squad then marched eastwards, conducting last-minute weapon checks as they went. Another zombie squad was then activated and moved up to stand beside the other one. The third SSU unit to enter the board was the Steel Guard sniper team. They placed themselves behind the regular infantry squad, ensuring quite a formidable sniper presence in the area. In a repetitive and psychologically burdening fashion, the third and final unit of zombies moved up to stand by their undead friends. The shambling vanguard was now well and truly in place for the Axis. Forced into committing their prized units first, the SSU sent the Alexander full throttle along the northern board edge in order to secure the SSU east flank with its deadly twin Tesla gun. In response, a Ludwig stepped onto the table and leveled its long-range anti-tank guns at the Alexander in the distance. The high armor value of the tank meant it only got to roll 1 dice, but it still managed to hit, dealing 3 points of damage, although 1 was soaked up by damage resilience. The Ludwig then finished things off by popping its smoke launchers. Captain Novikov then herded his command squad up into the cover of some crates. He then issued the radio operator an order to signal the Alexander, effectively reactivating the SSU war machine. The Alexander thus get to go again and easily rolled away the under fire token before powering up its main weapon, aiming straight back at the Ludwig. The twin Tesla cannon unleashed an electric burst of concentrated energy at its target and scored 3 hits in total. The smokescreen mitigated the damage somewhat though, and the Axis walker only suffered 2 points of damage. However, it was now also stunned. The second Ludwig decided to try and help out his brother, and so entered the field of battle next to its compatriot and fired. The shot, however, was rushed and missed its mark. The last unit to activate for the SSU was the Matryoshka, which simply performed a march move along the west flank, preparing itself for next turn. Using the sea of zombies as protective screen, Lieutenant Köhler and his squad of assault grenadiers hurried up the board as fast as their exosuits would allow them to. Since the SSU were all out of units, the Axis finally had their Jugluther move up into a central position. The SSU army has split up into two smaller battle groups, with the Matryoshka and the two sniper units going southwest, whilst the other units were moving towards the eastern flank. Displaying another set of tactics, the Axis have kept their force together. The infantry units have been sent towards the wood, and the walkers have taken up firing positions further back. In turn 2, the SSU got to go first and immediately turned to the Alexander heavy tank. This time it fired its terrible Tesla array at the other Ludwig. Sustained fire was granted by not moving, but still only 3 hits were caused. Perhaps not too bad a result, but the SSU had definitely been hoping for more. But at least the Ludwig was halfway destroyed and, better still, stunned, crippling its effectiveness. Before anything nasty could happen to them, Lieutenant Köhler led his armored men into the cover of the trees. Hopefully, being surrounded with dense wood would ensure enemy units couldn't draw a line of sight and fire at them. Eager to get into the action, the Matryoshka moved further south. It caught the left flank of the Axis army off guard and sent 2 anti-tank rounds screaming towards the Jugluther in the distance. Sadly though, both shots missed. The whistling sound of the heavy shells, however, caught the attention of their intended target. The Jugluther accepted the challenge and so turned its torso towards the Matryoshka and fired back. One of the shots hit and dealt 4 points of damage to the SSU war machine. Captain Novikov realized the Alexander was engaged with multiple enemies and so tried to even out the odds by reactivating it. Unfortunately though, both attempts failed. The Axis player didn't see the need of activating the Ludwigs yet, and so simply had a zombie unit march move up, continuing to pour Axis units into the wood. To counter this, the Steel Guard assault squad was brought up to the closest trees, readying themselves to unleash a torrent of bullets into the dark wood if necessary. Finally then, the Ludwig furthest back got the nod. It successfully removed its under fire token. Being stunned, however, meant it lost an action and so couldn't sustain fire. The single shot still hit though, and as the Alexander failed all damaged resilience rolls, a further 3 damage were caused, bringing it uncomfortably close to destruction. Long-ranged snipers could possibly find firing lines through the trees, and so the Steel Guard sniper team moved up slightly, tracking targets through their scopes. They could just make out one of the zombie squads and send 2 shots their way, hitting with 1. The shot, however, hit some swinging branches and was sent off course, sparing the zombies of any casualties. To further increase the Axis presence within the wood, another zombie squad was sent forwards. The only unit left to activate for the SSU was the Red Army Sniper Squad, which unfortunately couldn't see any targets and so contented themselves with moving further south. Next turn, they would hopefully be able to put their weapons to use. The last zombie unit switched into cannon fodder mode, bravely and slowly marched moving towards the SSU right flank. Lieutenant Köhler needed to have expendable support units draw attention away from himself, and zombies excel at such tasks. Lastly, the remaining Ludwig decided to have a go at the crippled Alexander, but failed to do anything but remove its under fire token. And so, turn 2 was finished. In general, the SSU forces are in good positions, but both the heavy tank and the walker had been severely damaged this turn. The Matryoshka and supporting SSU sniper units could hopefully turn things around on the right flank if more luck was granted them next turn. The left flank, however, was in danger of collapse should the Alexander fall. The Axis battle plan still seems to be holding firm, with the 3 walkers at the back dealing out damage from long range and enduring the SSU return fire. The infantry squads are occupying the wood, and miraculously, not a single zombie has fallen after 2 turns. That must be some kind of record. With the arrival of the Steel Guard's assault squad, some forest action seems unavoidable next turn. At this stage, we reckon the Axis have a slight advantage considering the damage caused to the SSU armored units, but we're still waiting for the first proper casualty of the game. The Axis managed to claim priority in the crucial roll-off, and immediately one of the Ludwig walkers reloaded and repeated proceedings from last turn. The electrical aftershock from the Tesla weapon was no longer playing tricks on the instruments, and so sustained fire was used to secure a hit. The Alexander failed 2 damage resilience rolls, meaning it was blown apart, leaving the SSU left flank entirely exposed. Since the Matryoshka was still very much alive on the other side of the battlefield though, the Ludwig decided to activate its smoke launchers. With the explosion of the friendly tank ringing in their ears, the crew of the Matryoshka aimed the machine guns at the approaching zombie unit and the anti-tank guns at the Jagluther once again. After clearing the under fire token, the machine guns opened up, killing a single undead zombie. Both of the armor-piercing rounds of the anti-tank guns hit home, however, resulting in a most definitely wrecked Axis walker. Finally, some success for the SSU player. The Matryoshka then moved back a bit, using the cover of the wood to shield itself from possible return fire from the Ludwigs. It really needed to remain operational in order for the SSU to stand any chance of turning the tide of the battle. Lieutenant Köhler then saw an opportunity for his squad's machine guns to cause some havoc. He ordered his men through the wood, walking carefully as to not expose themselves fully, and then instructed them to raise their dual machine gun fists at the Red Army sniper squad. The surprised SSU troopers were thus subjected to 55 dice worth of bullets from somewhere in between the trees. Needless to say, the entire unit disappeared in a terrible red mist. In an effort to capitalize on the enemy commander's movement, the Steel Guard sniper team were able to single out Lieutenant Köhler and so aimed their heavy sniper rifles at his head. Thanks to sustained fire and their power scopes, both shots hit home. The damage resilience of Köhler's warsuit deflected one of the bullets though, but the Axis leader was now bleeding. Köhler and his squad had definitely made an impact, but they were now directly engaged in battle, which could prove to be a costly mistake. The Ludwig, which hadn't activated yet, did so, and March moved further north, trying to herd the SSU command squad closer to the southwestern kill box. And then, in a desperate move to reclaim lost momentum, the Steel Guard assault squad entered the zombie-riddled forest with a prayer to the motherland on their lips. The SSU veterans spotted movements between the trees and so opened fire with their weapons. Despite a healthy set of dice, however, they only managed a few hits, most of which mainly caused minor damage to the sturdy, reanimated corpses. 2 measly zombies were gunned down, and the surviving 3 troopers, having been alerted to enemy presence, charged their assailants. These Steel Guard troopers were regretting their advance into the forest as a desperate melee was initiated. In close combat, both sides scored 2 hits, which was most definitely a win for the Axis. 2 zombies for 2 Steel Guard is a trade Lieutenant Köhler would take any day. Troubled by the flanking Axis walker in the distance, Captain Novikov ordered his command unit to join up with the last remaining pocket of SSU forces, creating at least a feeling of relative safety for himself. He then succeeded in reactivating the Steel Guard sniper team. Once again, they shouldered their rifles and zeroed in on Lieutenant Köhler. The Axis army was much stronger at this point, but victory could still be achieved by killing the enemy leader. One of the shots flew wide though, which was a real shame. Still, another wound had been caused on Köhler, and the entire unit of heavy assault grenadiers was now suppressed. The final activation of the turn saw the last zombie squad march moving up to lend support to the Axis commander. Things were starting to look very bleak indeed for the SSU by now. 2 precious units had been destroyed this turn, and they didn't have much in the way of map control. Their entire left flank consisted of 1 Steel Guard trooper fighting for his life in the wood, and the rest of the units had enemies approaching on all sides. The Axis army was faring much better and had stuck pretty much to their original battle plan. One of the Ludwigs had now also put itself in a great position to threaten the SSU from the right flank, effectively controlling the movements of the enemy. Whilst the Ludwig is keeping the enemy together, Lieutenant Köhler and 2 zombie units are moving in for the kill. The wood also clearly belonged to the Axis player, and the zombies had managed to hold off the intruding Steel Guard. Still, the objective was to eliminate the enemy commander, so despite dictating the flow of the battle, Lieutenant Köhler needed to keep his focus. The Axis won priority again and so could move out first this turn too. Lieutenant Köhler's body might have been wounded, but his will remained strong. He downgraded the suppression to under fire and then march moved into the open, using their maximum speed to get as far forwards as possible. Thanks to his special rule, move and fire, his unit could still perform a ranged attack as a third action, and so the machine guns fired away at the Steel Guard sniper team. Infantry Type 4 meant fewer dice, but the Axis troopers still scored 7 hits. 4 were saved by the improved armor of the SSU exosuits, but as the damaged resilience could only save 1, there were just enough unsaved hits left to kill 2 Steel Guard troopers. In the wood, the remaining Steel Guard blew his adversary apart with a blast from his heavy shotgun. Clearly affected by the dark creepy forest, the zombies, and the loss of his 2 squad members, he then hurried back the way he had come. The Axis player then activated the zombies behind the heavy assault grenadiers and moved them up to act as a fleshy, moaning shield for them. Some true heroics were definitely required of the Matryoshka now, and the walker slowly powered up and turned its torso to the right. The 2 machine guns gave the incoming zombies a close-range volley, and with the rerolls from sustained fire, it managed a massive 8 out of 10 hits. The notoriously resilient zombies, however, passed all but 2 saves, leaving 2 zombies left standing. A blast from its anti-tank guns then showered Lieutenant Köhler and his men, causing 3 hits. After infantry and damage resilience saves, 1 grenadier perished. The Matryoshka had caused some damage, but it didn't look to be quite enough at this stage. The eastbound Ludwig used its first action to move further north, almost reaching the still smoking wreck of the Alexander heavy tank. It now had clear line of sight to Captain Novikov and his command squad, and even though the Ludwig's machine guns was just out of range, it still opened up with its anti-tank guns. The blast from the barrage successfully brought down 2 SSU troopers. Captain Novikov himself, though, being a true SSU commander, refused to give up. Instead of panicking, he began shouting firing orders. His field medic and himself leveled their submachine guns at the zombies and pulled the trigger. Their 6 successful hits were able to finish what the Matryoshka had started. The machine gunner, though, were not able to even hit the Axis commander's unit. Novikov then tried to reactivate the Matryoshka, a potentially game-changing move, but he unfortunately failed. Back in the wood, the final zombie unit march moved up to replace the squad which had just been wiped out. The Axis were really keeping the pressure up on the beleaguered SSU forces. And lastly, the second Ludwig, now horribly out of position, moved as quick as possible towards the action-packed southeastern square. Nothing short of a miracle could save the SSU now. Their army is in tatters, and Captain Novikov is holding on by the most fragile of threads. Perhaps a perfect ranged attack from the Matryoshka can claw something back, but it looked doubtful. The flanking maneuvering of the Ludwigs is working out great for the Axis. The SSU have nowhere to run as the zombies keep on rushing right at them, whilst Lieutenant Köhler and his heavy assault grenadiers pick off infantry units with ease. The SSU simply couldn't believe their eyes when the Axis produced a perfect roll for initiative. Thus, the Ludwig in the northeast moved out slightly and finally had the Matryoshka in its sights. The gunner sent 2 heavy shells right at the opposing walker and blew it to pieces with an excellent roll. The driver then opened the top hatch and fired the pintle-mounted machine gun into the SSU command squad, killing the medic and leaving Captain Novikov looking very vulnerable. The Steel Guard assault squad unit leader then burst through the tree line in a desperate attempt to save Novikov from the undead monstrosities. The heavy shotgun barked loudly as it covered the zombies with steel, and dramatically enough, the SSU trooper managed to bring down 3 of the crazed creatures. Now tired of playing around, Lieutenant Köhler decided to take matters into his own hands. He dealt with the suppression token quickly enough and then sustained fired his 2 dual heavy machine guns at his adversary, Captain Novikov. His fellow heavy assault grenadiers did likewise. The amount of dice rolled was sickening, and the 20 hits that were caused didn't leave much of the poor SSU captain remaining. The unit leader of the enemy force had been killed, many times over in fact, which meant the Axis had won the battle. A loud cheer went up from the victorious party as they slowly disengaged from the battle. A post-game look on the battlefield shows the Axis dominance well and also illustrates the power of pincer movements. After a few unsuccessful early engagements, the shattered remnants of the SSU forces found themselves stuck between a rock and a hard place, the rock being the flanking Ludwig and the hard place being the primary Axis army led in person by Lieutenant Köhler. A well-executed battle plan from him indeed. Captain Novikov probably split his units up too much this game, the perfect example being the Alexander facing 2 enemy walkers and ultimately losing that battle. The sole survivor of the force, the unit leader of the Steel Guard assault squad, will have quite a terrible tale of dark woods and zombies to tell back at base. Unit of the game goes to the Matryoshka. Before it eventually was destroyed, it brought down quite a few Axis units, showing true fighting spirit unlike most of the other SSU units. Lieutenant Köhler's army performed great across the board. With the exception of the Jagdluther and a single heavy assault grenadier, the only losses suffered were zombies, meaning even the cannon fodder detachment fulfilled their designated mission objectives. The MVP award must be handed to the pair of Ludwigs though, as they combined to wipe all enemy armor off the field of battle, effectively removing the enemy's most potent tools of war, as well as harassing Captain Novikov to his ultimate death. Thanks a lot for viewing, everybody. Please feel free to give the video a like and or a comment if you enjoyed the report and want to see more Dusk 1947 content in the future. Until then, cheers from Sweden. Bye!